The alarm bells rang through every corridor of Galactic Medical Station Nexus Prime. Red lights flashed on the walls as crew members ran to their emergency positions. Dr. Zeth Kari pressed his four-fingered hands against the main communication console, his blue skin turning pale as he read the incoming message. Emergency distress call from Kepler 442b mining colony, announced the automated system. Multiple casualties reported. Hostile life form detected. The medical station had handled thousands of emergencies across the galaxy, but something about this call made Zeth Kari's stomach twist with fear. He opened the data files that came with the distress signal. Pictures and video recordings filled his screen, showing destruction unlike anything he had seen before. The mining colony looked like a war zone. Heavy machinery lay scattered and broken across the settlement. Deep claw marks carved through metal walls that were supposed to be unbreakable. Huge holes had been punched through the ground, creating craters where buildings once stood. "Computer, play video file 7, Zeth Kari said with a shaking voice. The screen showed security camera footage from inside the colony's main building. Colonists ran in panic as something huge moved in the shadows outside. The lights flickered and went out. When emergency power restored the image, a massive creature stood in the doorway. The beast was 12 feet tall and covered in thick, dark scales that seemed to absorb light. Its eyes glowed bright red like burning coals, and when it turned its head, those eyes seemed to look right through the camera lens. 4 powerful legs supported its muscular body, each ending in claws as long as a human forearm. Its tail swept, back and forth, knocking over everything in its path. But the most terrifying thing was its intelligence. This was not a mindless animal attacking randomly. The creature moved with purpose, testing the strength of barriers, studying the layout of the colony, learning the patterns of its prey. "Dr. Zeth Kari, we need you in the emergency medical bay," called Dr. Vexitar over the communication system. "The injured colonists are arriving now." Zeth Kari hurried through the station's corridors to the medical bay. Transport ships had already docked, bringing 17 injured humans from the colony. Some had broken bones from falling debris. Others showed deep cuts from flying metal. All of them had the same look of terror in their eyes. "It came out of nowhere," whispered one of the miners as Dr. Vexitar treated his injured arm. "We were working the night shift when the ground started shaking. Then this thing burst out of the tunnel system. It was angry, like we had invaded its home." Another colonist, a woman with bandages around her head, grabbed Zeth Kari's arm. "You have to help us," she begged. "It's still down there and it's getting more aggressive. Our weapons don't work against it. The creature's hide is too thick, and it seems to predict our attacks before we make them." Zeth Kari studied the medical scans of the creature that the colonists had managed to take before their equipment was destroyed. The results made him step back in shock. The creature's muscle density was 3 times that of any known predator. Its bone structure could withstand impacts that would crush a starship. Most alarming of all, its brain scans showed intelligence levels comparable to sentient species. "This is impossible," he muttered to himself. "No creature should be this perfectly designed for killing." Dr. Vexitar approached with a data pad full of test results. "I've analyzed the claw marks on the colonists' equipment," she said grimly. "The creature's claws can cut through reinforced titanium like soft clay. Its saliva contains acids that can dissolve most known metals. And look at this electromagnetic signature." She showed him a graph that spiked beyond normal ranges. "The creature generates electromagnetic pulses naturally. That's why all the colony's electronic systems failed when it got close. It's like evolution designed the perfect weapon." The medical staff gathered around the main display screen to study the creature's specifications. Dr. Corlan, the station's chief surgeon, shook his head in disbelief. "In 40 years of practicing medicine across the galaxy, I have never seen anything like this. Every aspect of this creature's biology is focused on hunting and killing. Its cardiovascular system can support burst speeds of over 60 miles per hour. Its sensory organs can detect heartbeats from half a mile away. Even its digestive system is optimized to process any organic matter quickly and efficiently." "What are you saying?" asked Zeth Kari, though he already knew the answer. "I'm saying this creature is the apex predator of apex predators," Dr. Corlan replied. It has no natural enemies, no weaknesses we can exploit. The only logical course of action is to evacuate the colony and recommend that the Galactic Council quarantine the entire planet. Captain Jake Sullivan had been quietly listening to the medical team's discussion from the corner of the room. The human liaison officer stepped forward, his calm demeanor contrasting sharply with the panic of the alien medical staff. "Before we abandon those people," Jake said slowly, "maybe we should try a different approach." The alien doctors turned to look at him with expressions that mixed hope with skepticism. Humans were known throughout the galaxy for their unusual problem-solving methods, but this situation seemed beyond any creative solution. "What do you have in mind, Captain?" asked Dr. Zeth Kari. Jake pulled out his communication device and scrolled through a list of contacts. "I know someone who might be able to help. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez is a veterinarian from Earth. She specializes in working with aggressive and dangerous animals." The medical bay fell silent. Dr. Vextar was the first to speak, her voice filled with disbelief. "Captain Sullivan, with all respect to your species, this creature is not a sick pet that needs medical attention. This is a killing machine that has evolved over millions of years to be the perfect predator. How could someone who treats domestic animals possibly handle something like this?" Jake looked at the images of destruction on the screen, then back at the frightened faces of the medical staff. "Because," he said quietly, "sometimes the answer isn't more weapons or bigger barriers. Sometimes you need someone who understands that even the most dangerous predator is still an animal. And animals, no matter how scary they look, usually have reasons for what they do." Dr. Zeth Kari considered the captain's words. The conventional approach had already failed. Their most advanced medical technology and years of experience with hostile life forms had produced no solutions. Maybe it was time to try something unconventional. "Very well," he said finally. "Contact your veterinarian, but I want it on record that I believe we are sending her to her death." Jake nodded and began composing a message to Dr. Rodriguez. As he typed, he couldn't help but smile slightly. The alien medical staff saw only a monster that needed to be destroyed. But if he knew Lisa Rodriguez, she would see something entirely different. She would see an animal that needed help. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez stepped off the transport ship onto Nexus Prime, with a small duffel bag slung over her shoulder and a confident smile that immediately unsettled the alien medical staff waiting to greet her. She was a woman in her early 40s, with short brown hair and kind eyes that seemed to take in everything around her without judgment. Dr. Zeth Kari had expected someone larger, more intimidating, perhaps carrying advanced weapons or protective gear. Instead, the human veterinarian wore simple work clothes and boots that looked like they had seen plenty of use. Her bag appeared to contain nothing more threatening than basic supplies. "Dr. Rodriguez," Zeth Kari said, extending his hand in the human custom of greeting. "Thank you for coming so quickly. I must warn you, the situation on Kepler 442b is extremely dangerous. Perhaps we should begin with a full briefing on the creature's capabilities." Lisa shook his hand firmly and nodded. "I appreciate the concern, Doctor, but I'd like to see what we're dealing with first. Could you show me the footage and any biological data you've collected?" The medical team led her to the main analysis chamber, where holographic displays showed three-dimensional models of the Shadow Stalker from every angle. The creature rotated slowly in the air, its red eyes seeming to track Lisa's movements even in the recording. Lisa studied the display quietly for several minutes while the alien doctors waited for her reaction. They expected her to show fear, shock, or at least concern about the creature's obvious lethality. Instead, she asked practical questions that caught them off guard. "What time of day did the attacks occur?" she asked, making notes on a small tablet. Dr. Vextar consulted her. "Records? The first incident happened at approximately 300 local time. Most subsequent attacks have occurred during the colony's night cycle." "Interesting. And what about food sources? Have you identified what this species normally eats?" The question seemed irrelevant to Dr. Corlon. "Dr. Rodriguez, this creature is capable of eating anything organic. Its digestive system can process metal alloys. I hardly think its dietary preferences matter when it's actively hunting colonists." Lisa looked up from her notes with a patient expression. "Every behavior has a reason, Doctor. even aggression. Has anyone attempted to communicate with the creature? The medical staff exchanged glances. Dr. Zethkari cleared his throat uncomfortably. Communication would be impossible. The creature operates purely on predatory instinct. It shows no signs of higher reasoning or social behavior. Really? Lisa stepped closer to the holographic display and pointed to specific details in the creature's posture and movement. Look at its ear position here, and the way it holds its tail. See how it pauses before each attack, testing the environment? This isn't mindless predation. This animal is stressed and defensive. Dr. Vextar activated additional data streams, showing the creature's biochemical readings. The stress hormone levels are elevated, but that's consistent with an active hunting state. Lisa studied the biochemical data more carefully, her expression growing thoughtful. These levels aren't just elevated, they're off the charts. This creature isn't hunting for food. It's in a constant state of panic. Look at these cortisol readings. They're 10 times higher than they should be for a healthy apex predator. She turned to face the assembled medical staff, her demeanor calm but serious. What kind of mining operations were happening when the creature first appeared? Captain Jake Sullivan pulled up the colony's operational records. Deep shaft mining, primarily for rare earth minerals. They were using controlled explosions to break through rock formations about 2 miles underground. 2 miles down, Lisa repeated, nodding as pieces fell into place. And the creature emerged from tunnel systems that connected to those mining areas? Yes, but I don't see how that's relevant, said Dr. Zethkari. The creature is clearly aggressive, regardless of its origin point. Lisa began packing her notes back into her bag with decisive movements. It's relevant because this creature isn't a surface predator that wandered into the colony. It's a deep cave dweller that was driven from its natural habitat by mining explosions. Everything you're seeing, the aggression, the territorial behavior, the elevated stress levels, these are the actions of an animal that's been forced from its home and is trying to establish new territory in an environment it doesn't understand. The medical staff stared at her in stunned silence. Dr. Corlon was the first to respond. Even if your theory is correct, that doesn't change the fact that the creature is extremely dangerous. It has already injured 17 people and destroyed most of the colony's infrastructure. You're absolutely right that it's dangerous, Lisa agreed. But there's a difference between an animal that kills for food and one that's acting out of fear and displacement. If I'm correct about what's happening here, there might be a way to resolve this situation without anyone else getting hurt. Dr. Zethkari felt a mix of hope and terror at her words. What do you propose to do? Lisa shouldered her bag and started, walking toward the docking bay. I'm going down to the planet to meet this creature in person. I need to see its behavior patterns firsthand and assess its psychological state. The suggestion sent panic through the medical staff. Dr. Vextar stepped in front of Lisa, blocking her path. Absolutely not. We cannot allow you to commit suicide. This creature has demonstrated the ability to track prey through solid barriers and generate electromagnetic pulses that disable technology. You would be defenseless. I wouldn't be defenseless, Lisa said gently. I'd have something your weapons and barriers don't. What's that? Asked Captain Sullivan, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Lisa smiled and patted her duffel bag. Understanding and treats. The simplicity of her statement left the alien medical staff speechless. Dr. Zethkari struggled to process what he was hearing. Treats? You're planning to offer food to a creature that could tear you apart in seconds? It's worked with everything from aggressive dogs to territorial bears back on Earth, Lisa explained. The principle is the same regardless of the species. You establish non-threatening contact, you respect the animal's space, and you offer something it values. Food is usually a good starting point. Commander Pete Harrison had been monitoring the conversation from the security station. His voice came through the communication system with obvious concern. Dr. Rodriguez, I understand your confidence in these techniques, but this isn't Earth wildlife we're dealing with. If you're determined to go down to the planet, I'm coming. With you. Full security detail. Lisa considered this for a moment. I'd appreciate the backup, Commander, but your team needs to understand that weapons and aggressive posturing will only make the situation worse. If this creature is as intelligent as the scans suggest, it will interpret military presence as a threat. What do you need from us? Pete asked. Stay back and let me work, Lisa said simply, and maybe help me carry some supplies. She opened her duffel bag and began showing the alien medical staff its contents. Instead of weapons or protective gear, the bag contained items that seemed absurdly mundane. Packages of dried meat, a small music player, several spray bottles filled with clear liquid, and what appeared to be children's toys. Dr. Zethkari picked up one of the spray bottles and examined it. What is this substance? Synthetic pheromones, Lisa explained. They mimic the calming scents that most mammals produce when they're relaxed. It's like a chemical way of saying, I'm not a threat, in a language the creature's instincts will understand? Dr. Corlan shook his head in disbelief. You're planning to approach the most dangerous predator we've ever encountered with dried meat and perfume. Lisa zipped up her bag and looked each of the doctors in the eye. I'm planning to approach a frightened, displaced animal with respect, patience, and an understanding of what it needs to feel safe. Sometimes the most powerful weapon you can carry is the willingness to see past the monster to the animal underneath. As she walked toward the transport ship that would take her down to Kepler 442b, Dr. Zethkari called after her. Dr. Rodriguez, what if you're wrong? What if this creature truly is just a mindless killer? Lisa paused at the airlock door and turned back with a sad smile. Then I'll probably die and you'll have to find another solution. But doctor, in 30 years of working with animals that everyone else called hopeless, I've learned that there's usually a reason behind every behavior, even the scary ones. The medical staff watched through the observation windows as the transport ship departed for the planet's surface. Dr. Zethkari began preparing emergency medical supplies, convinced he would soon be treating either a traumatized veterinarian or recovering her remains. But something in Lisa Rodriguez's calm confidence had planted a seed of hope in his mind. Perhaps the humans' unusual approach to problem-solving might succeed where conventional wisdom had failed. The transport ship descended through Kepler 442b's thin atmosphere, as Lisa Rodriguez pressed her face against the small window to study the mining colony below. From this height, the destruction looked even worse than the video footage had suggested. Deep gouges scarred the landscape around the settlement, and several buildings had been reduced to twisted metal and rubble. Commander Pete Harrison sat across from her, checking his weapons for the third time since leaving Nexus Prime. His security team maintained nervous silence in the passenger compartment, their eyes constantly scanning for threats, even though they were still safely airborne. Landing in 30 seconds, announced the pilot. Colony perimeter secured, but we're detecting electromagnetic interference. The creature is definitely in the area. Lisa opened her duffel bag and pulled out her music player, checking the battery levels and adjusting the volume to a low, steady rhythm. The security team watched her preparations with expressions ranging from confusion to outright disbelief. Dr. Rodriguez, Pete said quietly, I've reviewed the tactical reports from the colony's security forces. This creature moves faster than our scanners can track, and its electromagnetic field disables most technology within a 100-meter radius. If something goes wrong down there, we might not be able to communicate with you or provide support. Lisa nodded, slipping the music player into her jacket pocket. I understand the risks, Commander, but if we go in expecting a fight, that's exactly what we'll get. This creature has already proven it can outmatch human military technology. The only advantage we have is the possibility that it doesn't actually want to fight. The transport ship touched down at the colony's landing pad, and Lisa could immediately feel the tension in the air. The few colonists who remained were huddled inside the main administrative building, their faces pressed against reinforced windows as they watched for any sign of movement. Colony Administrator John Parker met them at the airlock with obvious relief and poorly concealed skepticism. Thank God you're here, he said, shaking hands with Commander Harrison. Though I have to say, when they told us they were sending a veterinarian, I thought it was some kind of joke. No joke, Lisa said simply, shouldering her bag. Can you tell me exactly what happened when the creature first appeared? John led them through the colony's main corridors, pointing out claw marks in the walls and explaining the sequence of events. It started 3 days ago during the night shift. The mining crews were working Tunnel Section 7 when they broke through into a natural cave system. That's when the sensors detected movement. They reached the colony's command center, where multiple screens showed security camera feeds from around the settlement. Most of the cameras had been destroyed, but a few still functioned at the perimeter. "Show her camera 12, John said to the technician. "That's where we last saw it." The screen displayed a section of the colony's outer boundary, where heavy mining equipment lay scattered like toys. Deep claw marks scored the ground in patterns that suggested the creature had been testing different approaches to the human settlement. Lisa studied the claw marks carefully. "These aren't random," she observed. "Look at the spacing and depth. The creature was investigating your defenses, learning how your barriers work. It's gathering information before deciding how to proceed." "That's what makes it so terrifying," John said with a shudder. "It's not just attacking blindly. It's thinking, planning, adapting to everything we do." "That's also what makes it possible to communicate with it," Lisa replied. "Intelligence means the ability to learn new behaviors. If it can learn to overcome your defenses, it can also learn that you're not a threat." Commander Harrison activated his communication system to coordinate with his security team. "Alpha Team, establish overwatch positions at coordinates 7 through 12. Maintain minimum safe distance and do not engage unless the doctor is in immediate danger. Bravo Team, prep the extraction vehicle but keep engines cold. We don't want to draw attention." Lisa walked to the window and looked out at the scarred landscape beyond the colony walls. "Mr. Parker, I need to know about the mining operations. How deep were you digging? And what kind of explosive charges were you using?" John consulted his operational logs. "We were working at depths between 1 and 3 miles, using standard seismic charges to fracture rock formations. Nothing unusual for this type of operation. Standard for mining, maybe, but not for the creature that was living down there," Lisa said. "Imagine if someone started setting off explosions in your house every day. Eventually, you'd have to leave and find somewhere else to live." The implications of her words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. The technician monitoring the security feed suddenly straightened in his chair. "Movement on camera 9, he announced. "The creature is approaching from the northeast." Everyone in the command center turned to watch the main display screen. At first, there was nothing visible except damaged equipment and scattered debris. Then a shadow moved between 2 overturned mining trucks and the creature emerged into the open. Seeing the shadow stalker in real time rather than recorded footage made Lisa's breath catch in her throat. The creature was even more impressive than the holographic displays had suggested. Its dark scales seemed to absorb the planet's pale sunlight, and when it turned its head toward the colony, its red eyes blazed like warning lights. "It knows we're watching," whispered the technician. The creature approached the colony's perimeter with careful, deliberate steps. Its head moved constantly, scanning for threats, while its tail swept back and forth in a pattern that reminded Lisa of an agitated cat. When it reached the outer barrier, it stopped and sat back on its haunches, staring directly at the command center. "Why isn't it attacking?" John asked nervously. Lisa grabbed her bag and started toward the exit. "Because it's waiting for something. It's trying to establish communication." Commander Harrison blocked her path. "Absolutely not, Doctor. That thing is 50 meters away and could be here in seconds. I can't let you go out there." "Pete," Lisa said gently, using his first name to emphasize her sincerity. "Look at its body language. The ears are forward, which means it's alert but not aggressive. The tail is moving in a regular pattern, which suggests anxiety rather than anger. If it wanted to attack the colony, it would have done so already. It's waiting because it wants to understand what we are." She pulled out her music player and showed it to the security team. "I'm going to approach slowly with non-threatening behavior and see if I can establish basic communication. If I'm wrong and it attacks, your job is to get everyone else to safety. Don't try to rescue me, just protect the colonists." John Parker stared at her in amazement. "You're really going to walk up to that thing with nothing but a music player and some snacks?" Lisa smiled and checked her watch. "I've done stranger things. Once I spent 6 hours in a cage with a circus tiger that had attacked 3 trainers. Turned out he had an infected tooth that was causing him constant pain. Sometimes the scariest behavior comes from the simplest problems. She opened the airlock door before anyone could stop her and stepped out into the thin air of Kepler 442b. The creature's head turned immediately toward her, and those burning red eyes focused on her with unsettling intensity. Lisa walked slowly across the open ground between the colony and the creature, making no sudden movements and keeping her hands visible. When she was about 50 meters away, she sat down cross-legged on the hard-packed earth and activated her music player. Soft, rhythmic sounds began playing from the small device. Not quite music in the human sense, but patterns of tone and rhythm, designed to be non-threatening to most mammalian nervous systems. The creature's ears twitched at the sound and its head tilted slightly to one side. "That's right," Lisa said quietly, knowing the creature probably couldn't understand her words, but hoping it would respond to her calm tone. "Nothing scary here. Just strange new sounds and a very confused human who's trying to figure out what you need." The shadow stalker remained motionless for several long minutes, studying Lisa with obvious intelligence. Then slowly, it lowered itself from a sitting position to lying down with its head raised, watching her. Back in the command center, Commander Harrison gripped his weapon tighter as he watched the scene unfold on the security monitors. "This is insane," he muttered. "She's sitting in the open with the most dangerous predator in the galaxy, playing elevator music." Dr. Zethkari's voice crackled through the communication system from orbit. "Commander Harrison, what is Dr. Rodriguez's status?" Pete activated his transmitter while keeping his eyes on the screens. "She's made contact with the creature, Doctor. They're about 50 meters apart, and so far nobody's dead." "Remarkable," came the alien doctor's response. "The creature's electromagnetic emissions have decreased by 30% since she began her approach. Its stress indicators are showing measurable improvement." Lisa reached into her bag and pulled out a piece of dried meat about the size of her palm. Moving very slowly, she tossed it halfway between herself and the creature, then returned her hands to her lap and waited. The shadow stalker's nostrils flared as it caught the scent of the food. Its eyes never left Lisa's face as it rose to its feet and approached the offering with cautious steps. When it reached the meat, it sniffed carefully. Test in 6 hours had passed since Lisa first made contact with the shadow stalker, and the scene outside the colony had transformed from a tense standoff into something that looked almost peaceful. The massive creature now lay comfortably about 20 meters from Lisa, occasionally accepting treats and responding to her calm voice with soft, rumbling sounds that seemed more curious than threatening. Dr. Zethkari and his medical team monitored every moment from orbit, their instruments detecting changes in the creature's physiology that defied everything they thought they knew about apex predators. The shadow stalker's stress hormone levels had dropped to nearly normal ranges, and its brain activity showed patterns consistent with relaxed attention rather than hunting mode. "This is unprecedented," Dr. Vextar reported to the assembled medical staff. "The creature's electromagnetic field has stabilized at levels barely above background radiation. Its cardiovascular readings suggest a state approaching actual contentment." Commander Harrison maintained his security perimeter, but found himself increasingly fascinated by Lisa's techniques. She had established a feeding routine, offering treats at regular intervals, while gradually reducing the distance between herself and the creature. More importantly, she was learning to read the shadow stalker's body language and respond appropriately to its signals. "Dr. Rodriguez," Pete's voice came through her earpiece, "the creature keeps favoring its left rear leg. Have you noticed that?" Lisa had indeed noticed the subtle shift in the creature's weight distribution. Each time it stood or changed position, it avoided putting full pressure on that leg. "I see it too," she replied quietly. "I think it might be injured." The observation sent new waves of discussion through the medical team orbiting above. "Doctor," Corlin pulled up detailed scans of the creature's lower extremities, examining them with fresh perspective. "There," he announced, pointing to a dark area on the imaging display. "Deep tissue damage in the left femoral region. How did we miss this before?" Dr. Zethkari studied the scans more carefully. "We were focused on the creature's offensive capabilities. We cataloged its weapons but never looked for vulnerabilities or injuries. The revelation changed everything about how they understood the Shadow Stalker's behavior. An injured animal in an unfamiliar environment would naturally become more aggressive and territorial as it tried to protect itself while healing. The mining explosions had not only driven the creature from its home, but had apparently wounded it in the process. Lisa slowly reached into her bag and pulled out a handheld medical scanner, one of the few pieces of advanced technology she had brought with her. The creature watched her movements with alert interest but showed no signs of fear or aggression. "Easy, big guy," she said softly, activating the scanner and pointing it in the creature's general direction. "I just want to take a look at that leg that's bothering you." The scanner beeped quietly as it collected data about the creature's internal structure. The results appeared on Lisa's small display screen, showing a detailed cross-section of damaged tissue and what appeared to be foreign debris embedded in the muscle. "Pete," she called to Commander Harrison, "I need to get closer to get better scan results. The creature is injured, and that injury is probably contributing to its aggressive behavior." The security team tensed as Lisa began moving slowly toward the Shadow Stalker. The creature's head raised in alertness, but it made no threatening gestures. Instead, it seemed to recognize that Lisa was trying to help and remained still as she approached. When Lisa was close enough to touch the creature, she stopped and held up the scanner so it could see the device. "This is going to help us figure out what's wrong with your leg," she explained, knowing the creature couldn't understand her words, but hoping it would respond to her calm tone. The medical scanner revealed the full extent of the injury. A piece of mining equipment, probably blown clear by one of the explosions, had penetrated deep into the creature's leg muscle. The foreign object was causing constant pain and had become infected, explaining both the creature's elevated stress levels and its increasingly desperate behavior. "Dr. Zeth Kari," Lisa called through her communicator. "I'm uploading scan results now. The creature has a severe injury with what looks like an active infection. It needs medical treatment." The alien doctor's voice crackled back with amazement and concern. "Dr. Rodriguez, the scan shows a piece of titanium alloy embedded 3 inches into the muscle tissue. The infection markers are severe. This creature must be in constant agony." Lisa looked into the Shadow Stalker's red eyes and saw something she had suspected from the beginning: intelligence, pain, and a desperate need for help. The creature that had terrorized the colony wasn't a mindless killer. It was a suffering animal that didn't understand why it hurt or how to make the pain stop. "Can you prepare medical supplies for treatment?" Lisa asked. "I'll need antibiotics, surgical tools, and probably some kind of sedative." Dr. Corlin's voice joined the conversation with obvious alarm. "Dr. Rodriguez, treating an injury of this severity would require the creature to remain completely still for at least an hour. Even with sedatives, the risk of sudden movement during surgery could be fatal for anyone in close proximity." Lisa considered the situation carefully. The creature had shown remarkable trust by allowing her to approach and scan its injury, but surgery would be an entirely different level of cooperation. She would need to somehow convince a wounded apex predator to submit to medical procedures that would cause additional pain before providing relief. "I have an idea," she said finally, "but it's going to require a lot of trust on everyone's part." She began pulling items from her bag, laying them out on the ground where the creature could see them. More dried meat treats, the spray bottles, containing calming pheromones, and several soft cloths that she used for cleaning nervous animals. "What's your plan?" Commander Harrison asked, though he suspected he might not like the answer. Lisa activated one of the pheromone sprays, filling the air around herself and the creature with scents that would signal safety and calm to its nervous system. The Shadow Stalker's nostrils flared as it processed the new smells, and its posture became noticeably more relaxed. "I'm going to use behavioral conditioning to prepare the creature for treatment," she explained. "First, I'll establish physical contact so it gets used to being touched. Then I'll gradually introduce the medical tools so it can investigate them without fear. Finally, I'll use treats and positive reinforcement to encourage cooperation during the actual procedure." Dr. Vextar monitored the creature's vital signs as Lisa began the conditioning process. "The creature's heart rate is actually decreasing as she works with it," she reported. "It's responding to her techniques exactly as she predicted." Lisa started by offering treats while gently touching the creature's shoulder, well away from The injured leg. The shadow stalker accepted both the food and the contact without resistance, its rumbling vocalizations taking on an almost purring quality. Gradually, she moved her touches closer to the injury site, always pairing physical contact with treats and calming words. When the creature showed any signs of tension, she would back off and return to safer areas until it relaxed again. "This is remarkable," Dr. Zethkari observed from orbit. "She's essentially teaching the creature to trust medical contact through positive association. I've never seen anything like this applied to a hostile life form." After 2 hours of patient conditioning work, Lisa felt confident enough to begin the actual medical procedure. She had managed to touch the area around the injury without triggering defensive responses, and the creature had investigated and accepted the presence of her medical tools. "Dr. Zethkari," she called. "I'm ready to begin treatment. The creature is as prepared as it's going to be. If you could transport down the medical supplies, I think we can help this big guy feel a lot better." As the medical supplies materialized via transport beam, Lisa looked into the shadow stalker's eyes one more time. The creature that everyone had feared as an unstoppable monster was looking back at her with an expression that seemed almost grateful. "Okay, big guy," she said softly, preparing to begin the surgery that would either solve the colony's crisis or become her final act of veterinary medicine. "Let's get you feeling better." The surgical procedure that followed became legendary among the medical staff of Nexus Prime, not for its technical complexity, but for the unprecedented cooperation between species it demonstrated. Lisa worked with steady hands while the shadow stalker lay completely still, occasionally offering encouraging rumbles when she paused to give it treats and reassurance. Dr. Zethkari had transported down to the planet's surface against all safety protocols, unable to resist witnessing the medical breakthrough firsthand. He stood at a respectful distance, monitoring the creature's vital signs while Lisa carefully extracted the piece of titanium alloy from its leg muscle. "Infection is more extensive than the scans showed," Lisa reported as she cleaned the wound. "But the tissue damage is repairable. This creature has been living with constant pain for weeks." The shadow stalker's red eyes followed Lisa's movements with alert intelligence, but it made no attempt to pull away or defend itself. When she applied antibiotic solution to the wound, the creature's muscles tensed briefly, but a gentle word and a treat were enough to restore its calm cooperation. "Dr. Rodriguez," Dr. Zethkari said quietly, "I owe you an apology. When Captain Sullivan first suggested bringing a veterinarian to handle this crisis, I thought it was a desperate mistake. I could not have been more wrong." Lisa smiled as she began closing the surgical site with biocompatible sutures. "You weren't wrong to be concerned, Doctor. This could have gone very badly if I had misread the creature's psychological state. But sometimes the simplest explanation is the right one. An animal in pain will act aggressively until someone helps it feel better." Commander Harrison and his security team maintained their perimeter watch, but their weapons remained holstered. The threat that had terrorized the colony for days had been transformed into a patient receiving medical care. Several colonists had even emerged from the administrative building to observe the procedure from a safe distance. "How long until the creature recovers?" asked John Parker, the colony administrator. Lisa finished the last suture and began bandaging the wound with materials that would dissolve harmlessly in the creature's system. The infection should clear up within a few days with antibiotic treatment. Full healing of the muscle tissue will take several weeks, but the pain should diminish significantly within hours. As if responding to her words, the shadow stalker carefully tested its weight on the injured leg. For the first time since emerging from the cave system, it was able to stand without obvious discomfort. Its posture straightened and the constant tension that had marked its movements began to fade. Dr. Vextar's voice came through the communication system with excitement and amazement. "The creature's stress hormone levels have dropped to baseline, normal ranges. Its electromagnetic field has stabilized completely. From a medical standpoint, this appears to be a completely successful treatment. But the success of the surgery raised new questions about what would happen next." The shadow stalker was no longer in pain, but it was still displaced from its natural habitat. The mining operations that had driven it to the surface continued to make its underground home uninhabitable. Lisa addressed this concern while packing up her medical supplies. "Mr. Parker, we need to talk about relocating the mining operations. This creature isn't naturally aggressive, but it will defend territory it considers essential for survival. As long as you're disrupting its underground habitat, there's going to be conflict." John Parker nodded, though he looked troubled by the implications. "The mineral deposits we're extracting are crucial for galactic trade routes, but I understand what you're saying. We can't keep traumatizing the local wildlife with our operations." "Actually," Dr. Zethkari interjected thoughtfully, "there might be a solution that benefits everyone involved." He approached the Shadow Stalker slowly, following Lisa's example of non-threatening body language. The creature watched him with curious attention, but showed no signs of alarm. This creature's natural ability to navigate underground tunnel systems could be invaluable for mining operations, the alien doctor explained. Instead of using explosive charges that damage the ecosystem, the colony could partner with local wildlife to identify mineral deposits and create access routes that don't disrupt natural habitats. Lisa looked at the Shadow Stalker with new understanding. "You're suggesting a cooperative relationship rather than a competitive one." "Exactly. Many species throughout the galaxy have developed symbiotic relationships with industrial operations. The creatures provide specialized abilities that technology cannot replicate, while the operations provide food, medical care, and habitat protection." Commander Harrison was intrigued by the concept. "The creature's natural electromagnetic abilities could also help us identify ore deposits without invasive scanning. And its intelligence level suggests it could learn to work with human teams rather than against them." The Shadow Stalker seemed to sense that the conversation concerned its future. It moved closer to the group, settling down near Lisa with obvious trust and attention. When she offered another treat, it accepted the food while maintaining eye contact, as if trying to understand the strange new relationship it had formed with these alien visitors. "It would require a complete restructuring of our mining protocols," John Parker said, warming to the idea. "But the potential benefits could be enormous: reduced environmental damage, improved efficiency, and elimination of conflict with native species." Dr. Zethkari began making notes on his medical scanner. "I would like to propose establishing a new research protocol based on Dr. Rodriguez's methods. The Rodriguez protocol could revolutionize how we approach hostile wildlife encounters throughout the galaxy." Lisa laughed at the suggestion. "I don't think it needs a fancy name, Doctor. The principles are simple. Assess the animal's actual needs, address sources of stress or pain, and work with natural behaviors instead of against them. Any competent veterinarian could apply these techniques." "Perhaps," Dr. Zethkari replied, "but very few individuals would have the courage to sit down in the open with an apparent apex predator and offer it a snack. Your species' approach to problem-solving continues to amaze us." As the afternoon wore on, more colonists emerged from their shelters to observe the transformed situation. The creature that had driven them into hiding was now resting peacefully near the colony perimeter, occasionally interacting with Lisa and showing interest in the human activities around it. Colony engineer Sarah Williams approached the group with preliminary plans for restructuring the mining operations. "If we relocate our primary extraction sites to areas the creature identifies as safe, we could actually increase our mineral yield while reducing our operational costs. The underground tunnel networks it knows about could give us access to deposits we never would have found otherwise." The Shadow Stalker's rehabilitation became a symbol of what could be achieved when different species worked together instead of in opposition. Within a week, the creature was leading human teams to previously unknown mineral deposits while the colonists provided it with medical care, food, and protection for its underground territory. News of the successful resolution spread throughout the galactic medical community, generating requests for human veterinarians to consult on similar situations across dozens of worlds. Dr. Zethkari found himself fielding communications from medical stations dealing with everything from aggressive space parasites to territorial crystal formations that might actually be living organisms. "Dr. Rodriguez," he said during her final day on Nexus Prime, Would you consider establishing a permanent consulting practice for interspecies medical situations? The demand for your expertise is already overwhelming our communication systems. Lisa considered the offer while watching the Shadow Stalker play with a group of young colonists through the observation window. The creature that had once been feared as a perfect killing machine was now gently allowing children to climb on its back while their parents watched with amusement rather than terror. "I think I'd like that," she said finally. "There are probably a lot of misunderstood creatures out there who just need someone to listen to what they're really trying to say." As her transport ship prepared for departure, Lisa took one last look at the mining colony. The Shadow Stalker watched from its favorite resting spot near the main building, surrounded by humans who no longer saw it as a monster, but as a partner in their shared endeavor. The creature that alien medics had feared as an unstoppable apex predator had been transformed by the simple recognition that even the most dangerous animals usually just need understanding, medical care, and the occasional treat. And sometimes, Lisa reflected, the most powerful weapon in the galaxy was the willingness to see past the teeth and claws to the frightened animal underneath. The Rodriguez Protocol would go on to resolve conflicts on hundreds of worlds. But for Lisa, the most satisfying moment remained that first successful contact. The moment when a creature everyone else saw as a monster had decided to trust a human who offered it food instead of fear.